Hi everybody, welcome back to our channel and to this series where I dissect TLC's Love in Translation, a multicultural dating show where no one speaks the same language yet everyone hopes to fall in love. Since this is the last episode, I'll be formatting this analysis a little bit differently. You can always jump backwards and forwards with the timestamps if you're looking for specific info. But without further ado, let's jump right in. This day, we find the house wrought with worry.
I feel a sense of alienation.
Discomfort.
It's super awkward.
And tension.
This is the end of the social experiment.
In just 24 hours, the men will be making their final decisions about which woman they would like to leave the experiment with and begin a committed relationship. Of course, the women also get a say in whether or not they want to be in the relationship, but at this point, it feels like we're fighting over which spoiled bowl of soup has the least amount of botulism in it. I'll hold my thoughts on the show as a whole until the end, though. Last episode, Tulay asked Dylan to promise that he would not have sex with Jam during their overnight date.
I kept our promise.
Yeah, right, but at least he's honest about his attraction to Jam.
Obviously, we figured out the emotional connection.
This mystifies me. Dylan has used the phrase figured out the emotional connection a couple of times now. Emotional connection is something that you form over time, not solve within 24 hours so that you can rationalize your poor decision making. I know he's only 21, but man, this is a warped view of how to establish a foundation with someone. And the fact that a 29-year-old mother is okay with that logic is beyond me.
I'm out of time.
Well, she's okay with a lot of things. After keeping parenthood a secret this entire journey, Jam finally decides that she is going to tell Dylan she has a son. But pay attention to her words.
I was always afraid that my connection with Dylan would be affected when he learned about my son. I don't know if this will break us up.
Entiendo si esto te aleja de mí. Lo siento porque tal vez ahora te arrepientes.
I cannot stress enough how repulsive this behavior is and should be. Jam talking about her son as if he's this little saboteur that keeps getting in the way of her having these lifelong romances. It's his fault for existing if Dylan decides that he doesn't want to be with Jam, not the fact that she's a liar and a sneak. Dylan's reaction is of course one of shock.
I did not expect that. It's definitely a little bit overwhelming now.
Initially. Then...
But does that change our connection that we've already built? Not at all.
And it absolutely should. His prefrontal cortex isn't fully formed yet, and it is showing, which is a solid point against this kind of age gap relationship. When someone is fully into their adult years and has a solid idea of who and how they are, that's one thing. But we've very clearly seen examples of Jam manipulating Dylan's emotions, encouraging impulsive decisions, and lying to him by omission. Those are 3 red flags that if he were an older adult, he might readily pick up on. Right now, though, that seems to be much more difficult for him. The next morning, the producers have the remaining ladies sit down to breakfast together so they can share how the experiment has affected them. When it's Aidi's turn to speak, she mentions how, while Khalil is a great guy, she found it difficult to remain open to him once he revealed that he was physically intimate with Jennifer. She's very indirect in her way of communicating.
そして彼らがセックスをしたら、それで私はそこで心が
But that's to be expected at this point, coming from a culture that focuses so heavily on saving face. Jennifer would say that she doesn't feel embarrassed or called out by the comment, but her actions and her body language say otherwise.
I'm less of a woman for the fact that I already had sex with him. That is extremely sexist. I'm tired of always respecting Aidi's culture and her never respecting mine.
This is a perfect example of a red herring fallacy. A red herring fallacy is a logical fallacy that involves diverting attention from the main topic of conversation or argument by introducing an irrelevant piece of information.
ブラジルと日本では本当に真逆な環境だから
Aidi bringing up the cultural differences between Japan and Brazil was about more than sex, and she's not wrong. Japan is often considered one of the most culturally homogenous countries in the world. Brazil is approximately 22 times larger than Japan and has a rich mix of African, German, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese influences. Japanese people are known for being more reserved and indirect in their communication, while Brazilians are generally more direct and expressive. Managing time, nonverbal communication, the concepts of social class and status, all of these concepts lend credence to Aidi's points. And apart from that, she's fully expressing herself with I statements, minimizing blaming Jennifer for anything. Tulay jumps to Aidi's defense and shares how finding out that Dylan had sex with Jam affected her. Surprisingly, Finally, she lets it slip that she gave Dylan an ultimatum to not have sex with Jam that night, and she was relieved to find out that he kept their promise.
Creo que tenemos una idea muy distinta de lo que es tener relaciones sexuales. Hicimos absolutamente de todo.
I knew it. I called it. Dylan is a slippery, lying sneak.
I'm annoyed because I asked him if he didn't want to have sex with me because Tulay asked him not to, and he said no.
But so is Jam. So they deserve each other.
I feel like I've been deceived. Then I don't think it would make any sense to enter into a relationship.
And she's absolutely right. Best case scenario here would be for both women to refuse Dylan so that he's left with nothing but the consequences of his actions.
I'm strong enough to walk away from him.
Are you though? The next scenes we see are of the guys going down to make their final decisions. Khalil still isn't sure who he's going to pick. Trip is still being fantastical. And Dylan is still fast-tracking the idea of a relationship without showing that he is able to be in one at all. Well, things are looking great. A car comes and takes them down to the beach. Trip and Lady are the first couple we get to see in this conversation. In true Trip fashion, he makes it unnecessarily uncomfortable and weird.
I'm about to ask Lady the most important question I've ever asked her.
He monologues about being nervous yet feeling brave.
Courage is one of the strongest traits a human can have.
He stands up, faces Lady, gets down on one knee, and...
Will you put your foot into this shoe?
This was very dumb. Trip has had nothing but time on his hands since episode 9 to figure out exactly how he wanted to ask this woman to be his girlfriend. And he chooses to imitate everything you would normally do during a full-fledged serious proposal, but give her a shoe.
I'm trying to show you something that symbolizes a perfect fit.
I don't care how infatuated you are or if you have your feet solidly on the ground. That's a letdown either way. What would have been a much more romantic gesture from Trip would have been for him to ask Lady if she was familiar with the story of Cinderella, talk briefly about how he's a sucker for fairy tales, call her his real-life Cinderella, pull out the shoe, get on his knees, and ask her to put her foot in the shoe to indicate yes or no she wants to be with him. That would be cute. What he did instead was a jerk move in my opinion. But it doesn't stop either one of them from saying those 3 magic words to each other.
I love you.
I love you.
They make their relationship official and they literally walk off into the sunset together.
I know we can make this work.
Even though the show aired in 2024, it was actually filmed in 2022. The last update I could find on either one of them being together was in April of this year, even though they had broken up for a month at one point. Searching both of their Instagram profiles and their TikTok accounts, neither of them have recent photos or videos of each other since May. Lady's social media doesn't show him at all, so make of that what you will.
Even though we're from 2 totally different cultures, we definitely still have a lot in common and things that we can build on. When I'm with Heidi, I feel like I'm in a dream.
Khalil's inconsistency is such a headache. I'm so happy that this is the last episode because I cannot take much more of this. He's sitting on the beach when Heidi walks up looking absolutely stunning. Once she is seated, Khalil reminds her how much of a good time he's had getting to know her. But Heidi does not return the favor.
でもなんかアイリーを選ぶ。
And thank the ever-loving Lord that she did. Before walking off the beach, Heidi confesses that she didn't necessarily like Japanese culture when she first came to the house.
After I came here, I realized I'm so Japanese.
Now she feels like she knows herself more, she's proud of who she is, and I could not be happier for her.
The cultural differences might have been too much of a barrier for us to really develop a relationship in a way that felt really natural.
I don't think so, and it's very bizarre to me that Khalil would make that statement, seeing as his interaction with Heidi appeared to be the most natural. It also contradicts what he said about her earlier.
I think we both have different needs.
I left my analysis of Khalil unfinished after the last episode because I felt like I needed more data. My first thought was that he is so inconsistent because of his lack of dating experience. While that is a big part of the puzzle, I think that what is causing the biggest rift between Heidi and Khalil is their different preferences for love languages. Hearing Khalil talk about how hard it is to not touch or be touched by Heidi, then hearing how excited he gets when he talks about how Jennifer lets him get physically close and intimate with her.
We're as intimate as it gets. Always holding hands, doing something, touching, rubbing a body part, and it just feels natural. Like Jennifer makes me feel like I'm cared for.
Leads me to assume that his primary love language is physical touch. And I think Heidi's might be quality time, seeing as she was most in her element when they were together in private and just spending time together. Could this connection have worked? Absolutely. If Khalil had stayed curious instead of projecting his idea of love and relationships onto Aidi's unfamiliar behavior, I do believe it could have. But she truly deserved better than somebody who couldn't clearly choose her without doubts. Next up is Jennifer, and it turns out Khalil has written his letter to her in horribly butchered Portuguese. It's so hard to listen to, y'all.
Ao todo eu vida tenho dúvida.
Thankfully, he expresses himself in English afterwards and asks her to be his girlfriend.
This is Jennifer. She's my new girlfriend, yeah.
Actually, she's not. According to an Instagram Live, Khalil shared that he and Jennifer broke up after a year and 2 months. And to be honest, that's exactly what they get. This connection was a slow-burning waste of time since the moment it began.
You're one of the most perfect women that I've met.
Never mind. Even though she's oh so perfect, Dylan tells Jam he feels that her son should have somebody that he can look up to as a father figure in his life.
And I really don't want to let you go.
Ya lo hiciste.
I don't know where this heifer gets off thinking that she has any room to be on a high horse. Even though she's crying, I have no sympathy for her. This is a clear case of somebody receiving the consequences of their actions.
I can't blame him for pursuing his happiness with a woman that doesn't have children.
On the surface, Jam's victim complex is annoying, but considering the fact that she's acting like this because she is an unwanted mother in her eyes is concerning. It feels like the only thing she took from this is that Dylan didn't want to be with her because she has a child, not to be straightforward with a love interest from the beginning, and not to be proud of her child and share his existence with future love interests. I worry that based on the little we get to see of her on this show, her son will grow up internalizing the fact that his mother is single as something that he is responsible for, when in actuality her situation is her own doing. Last but not least is Tulay.
We came here for each other and we're going to leave here with each other.
Yeah, well, not really. Tulay cuts right to the chase and asks Dylan again if he slept with Jam during their overnight date.
We slept in the same bed, but we didn't have sex.
Jetzt beruhigt, ich freue mich.
I'm speechless. To my surprise, Dylan and Tulay are still going strong, with their most recent social media posts being just a few days old. I can't for the life of me think about how this connection could be healthy without some major boundary setting. Good for them, I guess. I came into this knowing little to nothing about reality TV. When I heard about this show, I was optimistic that there would be something different about the way that it was produced, and I was hopeful it would shed light on the ups and downs of what it's like to try and make a language barrier / intercultural relationship work. While I did enjoy it in the beginning, that excitement took a major nosedive when I realized it was just another excuse for a tawdry TV show. In general, the show could have been much better. Higher quality, more mature, more well-rounded male candidates with a true understanding of intercultural relationships could have made this much more interesting. The producers could have done a much better job as well by giving each of the women some undivided time with the men at the beginning of the show. Or perhaps there could have been speed dates, giving each one of the women the opportunity to get to interact with the men during those activities. That would have given each person a fair chance. I would have even liked to see some culturally related dates happen between the couples. For example, a French-themed activity when you go on a date with one of the French women. Or toward the end of the show, once the participants have their translation devices, obligating the couples to talk about the everyday issues that intercultural and language gap couples face and make their decisions about who they choose off of substantial stuff. And lastly, it would have been great to watch the participants react to scientifically backed and proven love experiments instead of these half-baked, baseless assumptions and assertions about physical attraction and love. My original concerns about informed consent, cultural sensitivity and lack thereof, or unrealistic expectations still stand, as I feel like this show touched very little on especially the first 2 points. That was a big missed opportunity for TLC. All of that being said, if this show were to come out with a season 2, I would watch it again. I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt because the first iteration of anything always has room for improvement. If TLC happens to take any of the feedback from the show's most vocal watchers and use that to reboot the social experiment, that could be a great learning opportunity for participants and viewers alike. And I really appreciate you all hanging with me throughout this experience. Moving forward, we're going to continue publishing videos in English each week. Make sure to tune back in Wednesday for the first installment of our Mixed Relationship Mythbusters series. As we always say on our channel, with God, all things are possible. See you next week.